Welcome back to another exciting episode of MiniGrinder Paints Live. I'm your host, the MiniGrinder. That's me. All right, here we are. Hi. So today we're gonna have uh, Paint Monkey Karl on. Hope you don't mind calling all the
Yeah.
students paint monkeys because I'm the
Yep.
MiniGrinder. I mean,
Yeah.
it
Exactly.
comes with the territory. So
I expected to be. I'm honored to be a paint monkey here, and to see what wisdom you have to show us, and
right, yeah. So we're gonna be working
extra
on you
knowledge.
guys.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully you don't mind ding dongs and boobies. And
I'm pro ding
assicles.
dongs and boobies.
Is assicles a bad word?
I don't. It's a good word in my book. So it's I like all the bits.
Right, yeah.
When I was in art school, we would do the live nude models, and it was always, like I said, the more bits the better.
I
They
once
take
walked
light
in on
better.
my friend while she was live nude modeling. I was dropping off my drawing supplies early and made the most noise I possibly could have as when I was opening up the door. I kicked the door. My Walkman headset uh, things got caught on the door and that pulled it out of the jack. So it went from like this, calm music or whatever I was listening to, probably some Donovan at the time, and then immediately to loud clang. The silence of the room was completely broken, and there's my friend butt naked in the middle of the room. It was
It's
traumatic.
it's always an interesting thing, especially when it's unexpected. And when you're in the kind of arc of art school, and at beginning it starts out and you're like, oh, this is weird, and then you get used to it, and then the weird stuff happens. Like one time, we was like our final, and we were drawing someone, and it was an extended and we time. So it was like an hour and a half class, and we checked in like, are you good? And they're like, yeah. And then 5 minutes later, they just passed out, fainted, like face forward. And it was just one of those things where I was the one closest to the door, so I had to like go and go to the campus, get medical help to see what was get that. But it was like face first, plant just right into concrete.
Wow.
It was yeah. So it's the
So
crazy times of art school.
You have some so you have some background in art then. So we met at one of my first local painting classes that I did up at Underhill Games
Underhill.
in Akron.
Yep.
And,
yeah. It was
so we don't know each other before. We have common friends also. I don't know if you know Matt, my friend Matt.
Which Matt?
Matt S.
I have over 7 friends named Matt. So
right now.
Okay, yeah.
Matt,
yep, I know.
Yeah. So we have I was friends with him for like we were good friends for like 20 years, but we haven't spoken to each other for like almost 20 years too. So,
yeah, I like I said, with my involvement in the music community, but also gaming and all this stuff, I know most people into strange and expensive hobbies. So that's kind of I have a through line in there in some ways. Be it miniature painting, Dungeons and Dragons, or radio control cars, or synthesizers, all that stuff.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Oh, so synth. Yeah, Matt's really into the synths too. So. But so you dabbled in some art school there for a second? What was
I have a bachelor's. My bachelor's in sculpture. So,
okay.
So I'm a classically trained sculptor, and so I went to Kent State, got my bachelor's, graduated in 2009. And like I said, I focused on sculpture, but I did a lot of performance art because that was kind of there wasn't a performance art category, and that was kind of where you got lumped in sculpture. It's not painting, drawing, or printmaking, so here you go. But I was really into figurative sculpture, so that was kind of my main background with clay and sculpting, and so I really liked human forms and dangly bits, whatever.
This is perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really good at I don't know, I have some kind of quantum thinking going on where I can just tap right in.
Yep, exactly what'll be good. But yeah, yeah. So I've always been interested in how light works with the human figure and kind of muscle structures and how bone structures and how standing and poses really kind of convey information and kind of emotional information. And so a lot of that, my work was, early work was dealing with that. Oh, you're hearing my cat Mers.
Oh,
She
that's
comes to
fine.
visit
That's okay.
sometimes.
We got fur babies all around us.
Yeah. So
Nellie's currently crashed, so let's not wake her up because last time I had to get up to let her out.
yeah, I know how that goes. Well, my
So
cat needs to be pet. So all right.
let's talk about textures and stuff. You've been painting since we did our class. So
Yes.
that was like one of your first time painting, and then the organ grinders tune, the mini grinders tune struck a note in your soul, and then now you're stuck.
Yeah.
You're stuck in the hobby.
Yeah. I mean, my
My
wife and I have
condolences.
loved it. I mean, that's what we did for Valentine's Day. We went and we painted miniatures.
That's
We got
right.
each other a couple sets of miniatures, and we painted those. And like I said, I dabble in stuff, so I haven't painted as much as I want. But I
Of
ebb and
course.
flow. I go through all that stuff,
Yeah,
and
you have an
uh,
adventurous life. Let's see. That
so it just kind of depends on. And right now, with a newborn, I've been spending a lot more time
right.
indoors. I normally I'm really into bicycling, and I cycle between 100 and 200 miles a week going up into
Wow.
this, and now it's down to about 20. So I'm spending
Whoa.
all of the
My
time, and I've got my
my
baby
dad was really
monitor. So
into it.
now,
He would do bike trips, to and from Cleveland, and he lived in Deerfield. So
okay, yeah.
like he was here, he biked all the way from back from North Carolina, southern North Carolina. Like
So yeah,
near
I see. I love
Charlotte.
cross country cycling. So when I graduated art school, I realized that, like, hey, I have a degree in sculpture. That's not the most opportune thing to have in Akron, Ohio. And I'd worked a little bit at the Akron Art Museum, but did preparator work and wanted to work in museums. So I
Mm,
rode my bicycle from Akron to San Francisco. I did a 3,700-mile bike trip so I could work out at a art nonprofit, and I worked with the SF MoMA and worked at a Jenkins Johnson's art gallery. So I
oh
had like
wow,
three
that's
art
really
gigs
cool.
that worked out there. But that was kind of that was my like ace in the hole interview question. Be like, why should we hire you? And I was like, I rode my bike 3,700 miles to get a job, and they're like, hired.
That's like I said, it's we've been friends on the Facebook since after the that first
Yeah,
lesson.
session.
And so
Yeah,
I've gotten to, be able to see like a little snippets of your adventurous life. I'm somewhat jelly, mainly because I have kids, but now you have kids. So
yeah.
now I'm going to be just feel guilty when I see you go on with your adventurous life with kids, and I'm still just like, oh, I'm just using this kids as an excuse. It's all my fault.
Well, it is quite the adventure. I'm just really excited. As I'm just a big kid into lots of kid things to have
Right.
a little one to share in the excitement. I realize that at some point they'll be like, oh man, that's dad stuff. That's not cool. But at least for the little while, we'll be
Yeah,
we'll be in a
until they know better. You
exactly.
never know, man. It's like kids can be pretty loyal.
Yeah, we'll see how
I'm
it
really
goes.
lucky. I got some loyal kids myself.
So, fantastic. So for these, so we got our two little
These
male and
guys are
female
actually kind
here.
of big. If you want to,
Okay.
we'll throw. Here's like a mini.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
Yeah. So
Like
we've
full
got,
scale.
if they're in the same world, we're talking like
We're
eight,
talking some
10 foot.
serious golems,
Yeah.
man. These are some
Yeah.
serious stone golems. That's what I'm going to use them for. I'm going to test out my construct mechanics in
Ooh,
my game with these guys.
that's
So in my game, you can make uh, you can do creature creation also, not just character creation. And so there's constructs have certain abilities. Mainly their ability to like stay in battle, uh, like longevity as far as battling
yeah.
goes. Just because they're mindless automatons, you know. So that's kind
Yeah.
of like their. their mode.
Yeah.
So I pulled out some. So we're gonna texturize. Here's the plan. What we're gonna do. We're gonna texturize. These things are basically all stone. See the
Okay.
cracks all throughout them, and like there's cracks in the guys. You can see in the even in the helmet. So that's suggestive that even the helmet is stone also.
So, yeah. So
I would like. I mean, I could get away with painting some of it metal. I would like to paint some metal onto it somewhere. So I might end up doing that on the
contrast.
shields.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to give it some kind of contrast. But the other way that we're going to give it contrast is then after we do all the texturing and all that stuff, then we're going to switch over to doing glazes to shadow, so we don't lose all of the textures necessarily.
Yeah.
The
So
glazes
the
will
so the
kind of
underlying texture will show through
a
the kind
little
of
bit, yeah.
transparent
If we're
layers.
smart, if we're
Yeah.
patient and smart, and we
Yeah.
load our brushes properly, all that will happen for sure.
Yeah.
So
If
I pulled out
techniques work.
kind of uh three colors I'm going to work with to build up the stone texture. Um, Dark Elf Shadow, which in my actually now looking at it might be a little dark, but that's okay. That's not that big of a deal. So then we got some Gug Umber,
Okay. Yeah.
and which is I'm digging on the Reaper Pathfinder paints recently. They seem to have like really good rich colors. Uh, and then what was the last one? It was Moldy Skin is what it was. I pulled out
Ooh.
some Moldy Skin. Moldy Skin.
I love the names, and I really like the idea that someone's job is like, all right, we got to figure out what is this? What does this represent?
Right, yeah. I think that
And I
job might be
wonder how
open right
much
now.
if it's like top down, where they're like, we need a color that is moldy skin, or if someone's looking at it and be like, you know what, that's moldy skin.
That's Moldy Skin, right? Yeah, that's clearly Moldy Skin, right? So, well, the first thing I'm gonna do is remember from my classes. It's all about how you load your brush, right? And it's
Yeah. Hmm.
okay, like before I would say when you're dry brushing, just dry brush over your wrinkles on your hand. You'll be able to see
See, yeah,
if
if you have the
if
right
it's too
amount,
heavy
too
or
much.
whatever.
Yeah.
This I don't mind if it's a little heavy, so I'm actually gonna load it pretty good here with this dry brush. Oh, one other thing. If at some point in time, I should have said this before we started the stream. If at some point in time, uh, like you just seem to lose my audio for whatever reason, yell out, "Hey Dave, we're losing connection," so
Okay.
I can immediately reestablish it. Otherwise, it's gonna be a big hassle, and we're gonna have to
All
restart the
right.
stream and everything
I
else.
got the
So
hey Dave.
that's the real reason why you're here. You're keep the
To make
stream
sure that
alive.
the audio, make sure the
Right.
audio is check.
So I'm just gonna wipe off a little bit of the extra so I don't get too many big clumps. I don't really care if there's a bunch of clumps either, um, because it doesn't matter. It's stone texture. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I was like, well, let's just dry brush the initial saturation on, and it can be the ugliest dry brush that you really want because it's more about the texture at this point in time and
Less
getting
about the highlights and shadows and more about
yeah
just getting the stone
it,
feel to it.
right yeah well really at this point in time it's about getting some saturation on getting some something of the color. Now the color is not much color in gray, but
Yeah,
it's in there.
yeah. There's some pigment in there doing
It's a
some work.
pigment. It's fine. So I don't care how um, crappy the dry brushing looks because it's done basically. And even in the nooks and crannies, it's not going to matter because we're going to go back in with the glaze and take care of that stuff. So.
Fill all that out and get those crevices where we want them.
Now, do you have yourself a nice dry brush?
Yes.
You do? Did you end
Yep.
up picking it up from the game store also?
Yep.
So
Because I was like, all
you
right,
got these
this
same
is
ones, right?
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I had ordered a whole bunch of them from China actually. Um, boxes and boxes and boxes of them um, for the classes. I was The whole box of all my stuff is sitting over here, ready to do more classes. But then COVID
When
started.
that happens, yeah,
Yeah,
and
then
it's
that there goes those plans. So
yeah,
here we are, back to distance learning,
yep.
and
It all circles back around.
that's right. For I used to live stream 5 years ago, actually. I had, before all the live streamer, but I my studio materials like the cameras and stuff like that was only marginally uh, worse than what I'm working with right now. So, um, but at the same time, 5 years ago, so there's a number that correlates with that five, and that's the age of my son, right?
Yep,
So that basically that threw a wrench in things, and then
changes everything.
that changes. It does. It changes everything because then your time just starts going away, for extra things. So don't feel bad when that happens to you.
Oh
there's
yeah,
other there's other there's other things going on now. You
that's
know.
how I figured. Well, my thing is like I felt like I crammed enough in at this point,
Right.
that like
Okay.
like I've done a
You're
lot of
ready.
stuff,
You're ready.
that yeah, it's like between biking across country, recording albums with 6 bands, uh,
Yeah.
you
What
know.
do you play?
So I play all the things. It just depends on what band. So my current main band that I'm in is Fringe Candidate, and I just sing.
Okay.
And then but I also do modular synthesizer music,
Cool.
which is how I know Matt,
Yeah.
and so I do solo records with that just under my name. That I'm
That's
working on
cool.
a new one called the Crooked Timber of Humanity. So that
That
one's a lot
sounds
of fun.
brilliant.
Yeah, so that gets a lot more abstract and harsh. But then I also am in a kind of avant-garde metal band that I play bass in called Contamination Diet, and then
Nice.
I am in a doom metal band called Doom Christ. We have all the robes and black mass stuff that
Wow.
we usually play once a year, and it all started. We used to play on Black Friday back when I know they don't do it anymore, but people would line up at 3 a.m. and everything would open at 5. But people would be there at midnight, and so we would go with car batteries and shopping carts with amps, and we'd be because we were like,
Wow.
well,
That's
what's the most
brilliant.
metal music? It was like, oh, it's playing to people who don't want to hear it, and I was like, oh, so we wrote songs about how it was too early for shopping and all that stuff, and and that was kind of how that started. So there's
That's brilliant.
videos of us pushing,
That's so great.
shopping carts full of amps across bridges and through the Target parking lot at 3 a.m. and
That's
so
wonderful.
yeah, so that's kind of how that goes. But then I also play guitar in a kind of a rock band called Witch Moth, and then I've been in
My
various
goodness.
other bands. So like I
We're
said,
gonna have to we're
dabble
gonna have to
whatever.
we're gonna have to hang out at some point in time after the end of the world.
Yeah, when we have to start anew, right?
Yeah, right, yeah. We're gonna have to get together sometime. I play guitar, so and
Fantastic.
I've been working on I have about eight 7 or 8 songs I've been working on. I'm slowly adding more and more and more, but it takes me forever to get anything ready with writing songs. I'll be working on them for like the next 5 or 6 years probably.
Yeah, I go through phases with that. Well, half of my music is improv music, and then half of it is like through composed and very,
That's great.
structured. Because then I appreciate all the different aspects of it. There's
Right,
something about full improv where nothing is planned, and especially when you're dealing with a modular synthesizer where you've got thousands of wires and you can never recreate the same sound exactly twice like that.
right,
You'll drive yourself crazy if you're trying to do the same exact thing unless you're just purely sampling it. But with
right.
the kind of rock bands we have is more of a traditional structures, so I definitely appreciate that. But those take a lot longer, to work. We just recorded an album in Detroit with my band Fringe Candidate that should be coming out soon.
That's
But
cool.
we've been working on it for about 2 years,
Right.
and
Well, that's a significant amount of time to be working on a project like that too. So
yeah, and
usually I find when people just sort of like they're just winging it. I mean, unless they're like absolutely Mozart level brilliant,
yeah,
it sounds like they winged it also. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
indeed, yeah.
But it's a good amount of time to work on something, especially if you're such a versed musician.
It's and like I said, for me, it's definitely it's less linear, and it'll be just kind of feast and famine. Like sometimes you'll be going, and I'll be like, "Wow, I wrote 4 songs this week," the beginnings of it, and then there'll be like 6 months where it's like nothing, and
Nothing.
then it'll ebbs and flows, and that's kind of why I have so many hobbies. Is when I hit these like dry
Right?
parts, well, then I can do something else, and then everything that I do, they all interconnect, and there's certain things then that'll inspire me, like, well, I'll be painting this miniature, and just the way that I'm looking at light and seeing kind of the emotional aspects of it, I'll start thinking of lyrics, and then I'm like, all right, I gotta grab my
Mm,
guitar, so it'll be like 2 in the morning, and I'll be like painting something, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I got a song, we got, and
gotta do it.
I have
Just gotta
a
unlock.
recording set up, and
Gotta
I'll
unlock
walk
it, man.
yeah, so it's definitely a varied practice, and I mean, I've been playing guitar since '97, so
Okay.
it's not like a thing that I've
Longer, a little bit longer
picked
than
up.
me. Now, there's a period there after my kids were born where I didn't play guitar at all.
Yeah, well, for the last honestly, until last May, there was about a 10-year period where I didn't really play guitar. That was really focusing on synthesizer, and so most of the people who knew me didn't even knew I played guitar. But it was one of those things where, like, I was bored with guitar. I played I
Right.
played guitar growing up, and then it was just like I like that. I like, ooh, I've got this box that I can plug wires in, and I can get any sound or even more sounds than I could ever think of. And
Right.
then I'm just like, man, you know what? You know what's really great? I really like those early Scorpions records. I want to play that, so, so it just kind of, it ebbs and it flows.
Right.
Um,
So, so right now, what I've done is I don't know if you can see. This is the tips of my brush. My dry brush. I've really kind of spread it out.
yeah, it's
Right.
real kind of, yeah,
I kind of grabbed like the worst of my dry brushes, and it's all about how you load that brush right here. Right. Just you want it to kind of be varied a little bit. Just kind of play with it, you know. And it's kind of like it's a lot like a dry brush when you stipple with it. Also, it's almost
yeah,
like it works the same. Um, but we're just gonna just lightly put some. We're just adding grain onto that stone, right? And it's okay if it's
yeah,
like splattery like that.
yeah,
That's actually fantastic. You know, I love
yeah,
that.
because
I
that
love that.
the lack of uniformity kind of because starts to
It
build up, like I said,
implies.
that texture, and implies that it's weathered and worn, and I imagine a stone golem did not be pristine, so everything is kind of
Maybe at
you
one
know
point in time it was,
yeah,
but you know,
not this
right? Yeah, they're gonna be around for a little while. And the thing is, you want some. Actually, let's see if I can pull that back there. You want even more contrast than whatever I'm putting on there right now. So we might go in and stipple with a detail brush too, or just maybe some more delicate hits with this thing. Just kind of randomize. I'm twisting the brush around because I don't want the same bristles to be hitting the same. You know what I mean?
yeah, you don't want it to just look like, oh, you just moved a brush left, and like
Right.
being
Yeah.
very very deliberate with the kind of brush marks,
It'll be easiest to see maybe on the back here.
yeah. That was one of the things that, as I've done more miniature painting, is really trying to use the brush itself, as instead of trying to eliminate it, but using it as, using the tool to kind of help add layers, instead of
Right. Yeah.
trying to just being like, oh well, those brush marks is just looks like, oh, you just painted with a brush, but it's this idea that it
There's a
then becomes part of the
gesturalism, you know.
yeah,
We oftentimes we like get stuck in trying to make everything smooth, you
yeah,
know, and it's freeing to not care so much, I guess. You know, the
yeah,
one thing that I am trying to do is I'm not trying to be too uniform here
yeah,
either, because I mean nat the randomness in nature is beautiful, and that's why we see it as beauty, because it seems like something familiar but unknowable all at the same time, and I
yeah,
think that would be my definition of beauty in the
yeah,
mind's eye, anyways. And so, like, when you're painting textures like this, it's something so simple to do. You just want to just make sure that you're not doing the same thing everywhere
exactly. Yeah,
exactly
you
the
don't want it to
same.
be a pattern. You want it to be a texture.
Right, yeah, precisely, yeah. So I'm kind of twisting the brush around. I'm doing whatever I'm not I'm not thinking about or worrying about how the brush is going to interact with the surface too much. I mean, other than like I want to get down in here, because I even with the shadowed spaces, I don't want it to dry brush too much. So
Yeah,
it's really important that you're actually trying to fill the nooks and cranny spaces if possible. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. Because again, gives that uh, kind of depth to it that if it was more uniform or more predictable, there's a certain amount of like, where you're kind of generally putting it, but you're letting the brush kind of add extra layers to it. I mean, that's a lot of what my synthesizer music, and that's one of the reasons I really like the
Let me
synthesizer.
hear it up.
There's so many ways to add randomness, like like
And then
controlled
how
chaos.
right, yeah, composed chaos.
Yeah,
Precisely. Precisely. That is yes. Yes, we are kindred spirits, my friends.
yeah. And so it's those things that, like, when I'm composing a piece of synthesizer music, I'm not worrying about what individual notes are hitting. I'll set the ranges, and then I will introduce noise and other things, kind
Right.
of other rhythms and other things that I'm not necessarily controlling, and then creating these large feedback loops that it's so complex that you could never exactly know exactly what's going to come out, but the range that it's going to get, and that
Right.
it's going to fill this kind of frequency range. But exactly how many times that particular percussive sound strikes, it might be 2, it might be 10, you know and that's what's kind of fun about it. But again, it's not completely random. There's
Right.
you're still driving it, you still
It's
have to poke the
recognizable.
brush. I still
Yeah.
have to uh,
That
route the
goes back to
signal. I
my
still have to put it input,
that's
so
right. That goes back to my definition of beauty. It's recognize it's like familiar but unknowable, you know?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
'Cause again,
that's the that's beauty.
again, yeah, exactly. Because anything that's too knowable or too easy is just, it's not interesting. You're like, okay, yeah, it's
Right.
uniform.
Right,
I
yeah.
mean,
There's
in many
uniformity. Yeah,
ways.
that's easy to understand. My brain is bored with you now.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Right.
But then when you look at it something, and you're kind of forced to be like, well, that's kind of more than what you initially think. There's kind of a double
Right.
take you do. At first your brain, and that's the familiarity. You're like, okay, I know what that is, and then your brain does a double take. You're like, but wait, there's more information that doesn't quite line up to what your brain would normally think. If it was just filling in the gaps for your mind's eye, generally, it wouldn't do it that way. And you kind of, when you look, especially on the miniatures, I love when you look real close up and you're like, but there's that particular speck, and you're like, on paper that spec doesn't make sense, but it works.
Right.
and
The real
I
trick
think,
here is, uh, how how bright are we going to make these specs? Because
oh,
right now it's starting to look pretty stony,
yeah,
right? It's starting to get there. But with miniatures, we need them to be brighter.
yeah,
We need
you got to
more.
exaggerate the contrast, to
But
because it being so small a little bit.
the beauty of we can do we can add that randomness in different layers also. You know, so
Hmm.
that's why I got the black here too. We can throw some black. or that night. What was it? Dark Elf Shadow. That's what
Yeah, Dark Elf Shadow. Yeah, they
I'm
really
trying to get
kind of
that guy too.
deep.
So we're not only put the light specs on there because I'm not trying to lighten them up necessarily. Because remember,
Yeah,
I'm going to do all my shadows with the glaze. It's I'm just trying to add texture for the you know.
yeah.
Now it's okay if the edges get like kind of like an edge highlighting. Honestly, a little bit. I'm okay. It's
Okay.
not that's not that big of a deal because you would think that their edges would have a little bit more wear and tear on them. So that's something to think about also.
It's also, again, it's a thing to play around with too. You know, it's something to be like seeing how that works when you add more or less of it, and seeing, you know, when you look at it, and that's, to me, that's always the fun part. You know, because when you're up close looking, that's great, and then I'll like close my eyes and stand back, and then come back to it and try to get a first, fresh perspective. And that was
Fresh
the thing,
perspective.
back from when I was doing sculpting. My professor was always like, when you're working up, you got to take a break, let your eyes rest, go back, and then come look at it with this fresh set of eyes and different perspective, and you're going to see things very differently than when you're up close and just focusing on one detail.
And that
So
you can do that even just by like taking breaks off of
yeah,
things, anything with all things in life.
yep,
Works, right? With all things.
yeah.
That's
And
how
it's funny how much that
how-
reveals, because you're like, man, I was really just obsessing over that left hand. You didn't realize it at the time, or
right.
something, when you're painting it. Then you go back and you're like, oh,
So I'm just
all
gonna
right,
paint. I'm gonna do both of these. I think we got enough time
yeah,
to do. I personally think we got enough time to hit both these
yeah,
things up. At least
yeah,
the majority of it.
yeah. I think that sounds good. I
All right.
really. And
Um,
which miniatures are these specifically?
these are. I think they're just. I gotta find the link. You did it. You asked the right question.
The
Thanks, dude. I'm
All
busy
right.
here. Can't you see I'm busy? They're statues
Oh, wait, wait.
by Reaper Miniatures. I have a
Nice.
sponsorship with Reaper, and they send me miniatures to paint. Um, so I'm very thankful of that. I have a lot of
Yeah,
miniatures to already paint, so just
yeah.
adding to an already existing problem.
I mean,
But
I
they're a
mean, I
hell of
can
a
relate.
they're a hell of a
I let a
company.
Yeah,
They're so I'll gladly paint them. And I slacked on my sponsorship there first couple of months when
yeah,
coronavirus started up and everything like that. And so, um, but I'm bouncing back here.
yeah. I know. It's we got to do it here now. We're in August, right? It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
it's a bizarre.
if anybody if anybody is going to be if you're watching and you love the Reaper as much as I do and you love me, you can in the description of the video is a sponsors link. So just click on that to head over to their store. And um, I only paint with Reaper paints. It was kind of like obvious that I was like, hey guys, I paint Reaper all the time. I have basically one major client who has me do display level stuff for them. Uh, all Reaper stuff, and I paint with all the Reaper paints. So that's all the Reaper paints. Got
There we go. Yeah,
lots of Reaper paints. Right.
yeah. It's
No,
fantastic.
it was like it's kind of obvious. Maybe that's what I should do.
Yeah,
So yeah, they're always really, really awesome. I've been to a couple Reaper cons, and the people down there just amazing community. I don't know what it is about gamers,
yeah,
more specifically, maybe artist gamers or people hobbyist gamers.
yeah.
They just seem like it seems like my people or something.
Yeah,
Not
I
that
think
I'm
there's
not that
definitely
I'm
some kind of logic behind, of like the ways that they view kind of things, especially when you're looking, like, appreciating detail, and again, there's a certain appreciating that element of randomness, or there's something there that
right.
it's like, look, because when you're deep in all these hobbies and you're doing all this stuff, and then you go like talk to like some random person at the grocery store, and it's just like it's so they're just on a totally different level, not better or worse, but just like
It's
not
just a different
viewing things, and like
right.
when you we know when, like the same way they're not viewing the way light is creating a shadow off of
They don't
off
care.
an X.
It's just
It's like
part of
they don't
reality. It's a
like yeah, it's like, oh, what color is your shirt? Well, it's blue. We're like,
it's
well, if I'm painting a shirt, it's not just blue. It's there's the complementary colors that if I'm mixing up the shadows, there's the texture, and it's
right.
kind of it's just, but so I feel like especially in the artist gaming side, we spend all the times obsessing over shit that people don't care about.
Right. Yeah. Right.
That's everyone else, they see it and they're like, yeah, so, and we're like, but the way that the light is rippling off the buckle and the leather has that sheen to it, and and it's not perfect. They're like, yeah, those are old shoes, and you're like, but no, they're great.
Yeah, but at the same time, then we're also constantly searching for validation.
Yeah,
That's our downside.
yeah. Well,
Constant validation.
yeah,
Please validate me. Please validate me. And then there's I feel like for as much love, there's also like a significant amount of drama that goes on amongst the
yeah. Yeah, there's a drama and loneliness there. There was
yeah.
it was a quote from, I think
Right.
it was Dr.
Yeah.
Dave Smith, and it was like loneliness is the condition of the artist's creative life. And I remember like hearing that like in art school, like 15 years ago, and being like, whoa, it's like that's something, So it's just there's a dichotomy there, and I think that's something else that kind of that tension also pushes that,
We
but
could
it
have
also
ran into each other at some point in time in the art side of campus.
yeah.
I was over there until 2003, maybe,
Okay, yeah, I
and then
was slightly after
I
there. I came.
switched over to physics from art education.
Got it. Yeah. Oh, I started in art education too. That lasted about 6 weeks. Until I was in my first sculpture class, and my professor was like, "You're really good at this," and I was like, "I've never sculpted in my life." He's like, and he was like, "You should become a sculpture major," and I was like, "Yeah." And then because I was in my first art education class, and the teacher was like, "What kind of student were you? Think back." I was like, "Oh, I was a terrible student. What am I doing here?"
Right.
I'm gonna go hang out in the sculpture building and make weird things and like run around naked and paint shit. So
Right.
it was just art school is a weird place. It's
Yeah. I had to
there's a
get
lot.
out. I realized, and this is gonna sound super jaded, but I realized that I really didn't like artists.
Yeah. Uh,
At least the ones that
Insufferable is the
there was
word.
ones that were just so very serious. And I the people who are that serious about it, I'm skeptical about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? About anybody who's that serious about anything, I'm a
Yeah.
little. You know what I mean?
You take yourself too seriously, and then that was the thing, and that was why like a lot of my art always had an element of humor and ridiculous, and there was an overtopness to it, like
Right. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Good.
like some of it was downright raunchy, but I mean I made a climbing wall out of casts of testicles, so like
Wow. You mean
so
assicles.
yeah, so that was installed, that it was a 12-foot climbing wall, and it's just and that was obviously at the Kent bars at the time. It then became like, oh, you're the ball wall guy, and I'm like, well, that wasn't exactly what I was going for, but whatever,
The ball
again,
wall. Nice. Nice.
but it just but there was just always weird
Carl,
weird things happen.
I got to take an opportunity here to thank you for joining me, and also for being as talkative as the other paint monkey, Justin.
Yeah.
It makes my life easier because I have no idea how I could possibly do this for 2 hours and then talk about it like nonstop. So
I mean, and that's the thing. Having like a good banter back and forth really makes things go faster. But then again, it also makes you you'll get to a point and you're like, wow, there's a decision point here, and now I have another voice being like, hey, what about this? And you're like, oh, that's a
yeah.
way, and that's why I always liked especially the same thing with like when you're doing music. I think that was one of the other things that were like a lot of times art was always just you're making your masterpiece, but then when you're in music, you're like with trying to communicate with other people, and that makes it harder in some ways. But at the end of the day, I feel you arrive places that you never would if you were just looking at your only one perspective. So,
Right. Sure.
and that's what kind of drew me more into music, because that was the kind of thing as I kind of like was stuck between the intersection of art and music, and then veered more into the music side the last 10 years rather than the art side. But again, all of it informs the way I view everything.
Yeah,
So
it doesn't really. I mean, as long as it's good to have a hobby. Honestly,
yeah,
it's just that.
yeah,
I think if we distract ourselves with you know social media or TV or any stuff like that, then we're I don't know, like I don't know how much life we have really.
it's
And
too
for me, it's
passive.
that's what it really boils down. I don't know what how much there is left to life. And so if
Yeah,
you're just if you're just doing on your phone all day, stoplights, everything, I mean, then I don't know, what'd you do
yeah.
exactly? You
It's
know?
tough, and for me, I will. If I'm not doing a hobby, I will do that. So it's like I fight that thing,
Right.
but
But
it's
I'm
like, and
not.
it gets
I'm not. I'm not pointing my finger at anybody else other than me. I actually recently got rid of the FB off my phone, and
yeah,
it's been liberating, honestly. And now I only interact with it. Um, I only interact with it, when it's attached to the computer. Which at the same time, before I was neglecting my actual computer because I do so much from my phone. And back in the
yeah,
day, whenever I stopped live streaming, I started doing recorded videos also. So I have a lot of recorded videos on my site, on my YouTube, and I would um, make those videos totally with my phone
yeah.
and upload them, and I didn't need a computer. But there's things that you can do on a computer, especially business related, administrative stuff, that just it makes it
It
easier.
just
And
makes
so
it
like
smoother. Yeah,
and really, the social media on your phone makes it too convenient for you to not do real work, especially when you work from home and it's you know
yeah. I have to like put my phone away and not touch it, because again, it just gets kind of consuming, and you get this
hmm
weird feedback loop of posting and then liking and posting and liking,
right. And it's
and
more of a pain in the ass now to to post something from my life, but that's okay.
yeah, yeah.
That's okay,
You're like,
especially
oh man,
right
I didn't
now when
post
there's
about
just
it
so
because I
much
was busy living.
negativity you know
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing right now is it's become, especially since COVID, with everyone being home, and it's just added so much more negativity, and just really kind of showing the weaknesses of it, because at first everyone's like, oh look, we can share all this stuff, and it's great because I've been able to follow different Instagram accounts of like different miniature painters and different
right.
artists and all this stuff, and that's been amazing. But then you get caught up in all of the banter back and forth that's just not adding, again, it's not adding
It's
anything,
not adding
it's just
anything.
filling up space, and
It's
you go,
filling up
you look
space with
back and
not
you're like,
just
what
with
happened?
negativity, just
Yeah,
negative. And I just, you know what? I have a hard enough time keeping my, you know, mental clarity. I suffer as any artist would from
yeah.
depression and anxiety and these things. And like that's just that stuff doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. And
No,
so
it's
it was time to let it go in that format. And it kind of sucks because a lot of my life is on as far as my business goes. A lot of that
is
is
online.
tied directly
Yeah,
to the
social media.
Facebook,
Yeah.
and it's like that's what sucks the most. You
Yeah,
know,
but I think batching it makes you more efficient in many ways. It's just like knowing that, like, okay, I only have so much time, and I have to make the effort. So you're not just going to, oh, I'm just going to flippantly go in and like and do a throwaway comment here, and then get spiraled down into a debate, that you weren't
right,
intending on having. And it's and like I said, I've been more on Facebook just with the arrival of my son. With being in the
right,
Akron Children's Hospital for 109 days, I've used it as the main platform for people to follow that. but then sometimes it'll just
and
devolve or
that's then
to that kind of.
inspirational for other people. Maybe it's good that they understand that their lives are not that their lives could be in a lot different space than what they're currently in.
Yeah,
And that was
it's
nice.
been
That
a
was nice to be able to see. I mean, obviously it was hard. It was hard for you, but it was like, it gave me something. Like I was like kind of fighting for you over here. You know what I mean? It was like
yeah.
I'm on Team Karl.
Yeah, we had so many people
I'm on
reach
Team
out and
Milo here right
support.
now.
Yeah. And he just crossed the 9 pound mark yesterday. So we were at
That's
a
awesome.
doctor's visit, and so he's doing well. He has his
I would have been freaking
medical and
out
health
for 109
complications and
days.
stuff, but he all in all, like he's hanging in there, and he's healthy and everything is looking good. He does have a surgery that he has to have in a month, with some gastrointestinal things, so things
Okay.
will work, but all that, everything is looking good for that, and we're kind of on track, and everything should be fine. But that's kind of where we're at. So
I'm trying to get this thing to focus proper. It's
yeah,
focused here. It should be
yeah,
focused
it's
here.
focused on that guy. Yeah, auto
Wow.
focus sometimes. There we go. Nice.
Very speckly.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, if you look at it, it isn't a pattern. There's sometimes it weights heavier to one side than the other.
Right.
Uh,
You
you
can
know,
have big splotches,
yeah,
right? You can have big splotches, no problem. You can have fine spatterings. You can
yeah,
have single splotches. All of that's okay. What's not
yeah.
okay is splotches like that in the visor, right?
Okay, yeah.
That's not okay. So, and actually, it kind of looks like it's a little gunky or something there. I'm gonna
Take the blade and kind of
just run
remove
it
some of
through.
that.
I'm just gonna run it through there just to make sure.
Uh, I think one of the things that I really liked a lot about sculpture, and specifically when you're working with clay, was the both additive and subtractive nature to it. And so, like, when I'm working on painting stuff, like I still view, like, oh, if I don't like that part, I'll take my little hobby knife and I'll just scrape it out. And this idea that there is subtraction that can be had
Right.
with it.
So I just grabbed some of that dark elf shadow there, and I'm just
Okay.
working it around in that moldy skin space.
Okay.
And again, I'm just gonna play. I'm just gonna see what happens here. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
Just a little something else, some other kind of color. Because that dark elf shadow has like a purpley aspect
Yeah. It has.
to it. It's almost purple.
Yeah. It's like kind of that
Really
has
pretty.
that blue with the just enough red that kind of pulls it.
And I want to, you know what? I might have to. I just don't want to go overboard here.
Yeah.
You gotta. It's best just to sort of like test a little bit. Go in like no sense in going heavy with, especially when it's something dark. There we go.
Yeah.
Just adding a little bit more black specks in there. And I'm just gonna be super random with it. I'm not as heavy-handed as I was with the moldy skin.
Yeah, with the lighter.
Extremely
Being much
random.
more sparing with the dark.
It's just there just for a little extra something.
Yeah. And then again, the kind of like deep
At,
blue purplish pigment adds a nice kind of contrast to the kind of gray and moldy flesh tones.
and it adds to the randomness also, the green.
Yeah.
Because then now it's this other pattern, you know, over top a different one, when they interact with each other. It's hard to, it might be hard to see. It's on the side of the head there.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, something's happening here, dude.
Yeah.
It's easy. I mean, texturing's easy enough. I haven't really done much else than stab at this thing with a brush. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? I could probably look at the camera most of the time, or at least look at
yeah,
the screen. I don't even have to look at this.
yeah.
So it's not like super intensive.
Yeah, it's not, because again, we're not working from a direct light source per se in the
It's
same
more.
way.
It's just a matter of putting in the time to do it,
Yeah,
and then like not being too heavy-handed when it matters.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
yeah, because again, having the more layers of the lighter, kind of more finesse to it, again allows kind of smaller marks to happen. Because
everything's good. Everything else
cool.
is still good. Cams are
All right,
good.
I did my job. Yay!
Yay! Yay! We did it. Here we go. And
Protecting the stream one glitch at a time.
that's right. All right. Sorry about that. We did manage to catch the stream. It's bound to happen at least one more time.
Okay.
So we're good. Everything's good. Nothing is
Okay.
left. You're being very undude. I guess every episode I'm gonna do a Big Lebowski reference.
Hell yes. Dude abides. I don't know if you saw, but that was my wife and I's costume for Halloween last year.
Oh wow.
So I was
He was my
the
hero there for
dude.
a little while. In the turn of the 2000s, he was my hero.
Yeah. So so much wisdom to be had.
I'm the
Just will not
dude.
stand, man.
This aggression.
So
Oh goodness.
but that was also the one fun thing about my work, earthquake devices. We take Halloween very seriously, so we always have big like prizes for the winner of the Halloween contest. And I always come in second
Oh,
every year. Like this year, like it was like 2 tickets to Disney World or Disneyland. I don't know, whichever one was in
to
Florida, I think.
paradise.
But yeah, exactly. So I was the dude. My wife was Maud, and we had a good time. I think I got third this year, but
Who won
or
first?
third or fourth. It was our accountant bookkeeper Summer who was a handmade like bowl of ramen and had made like the noodles and then like the
Oh my
sriracha,
God.
and it was incredible. Definitely way better. But it was fun to be the dude because the dude bides. And then my band Fringe Can had a show that night, so I got to be the front man of the show as the dude.
Oh wow, that would have been awesome. That would have been
It
awesome.
was very awesome, but it was a difficult show because it was a Halloween party, so we had been
Right.
drinking for 5 hours already, and usually at a show you at least have a little I usually don't start drinking until the first song of my set, so I could keep it together. But this was
Right.
a little bit messier,
So
and there was a little bit of drama and controversy and things. There was
on
some,
on a
but all
Halloween
in all,
show.
it went really good. Some people, I think some of the people weren't as familiar with the dude, and I kept saying dude and man, and it was misinterpreted as not being not being respectful. And I was like, I was just quoting the Big Lebowski. I was not meaning to offend or disrespect
Uh,
anyone, and I was barely able to walk, let alone be angry. So,
right. Yeah.
but everything panned out, and it was a fantastic show and a fantastic time. But you never know. You never know what's going to happen.
So these miniatures, both of them, they come on. They
Oh,
came on
pedestal.
these
Yeah,
pedestals here. These nice pedestal, right? And I'm gonna keep them all separate because I want them to be able to hop off of them
yeah,
and go attack the party.
and animate. Yeah,
Right. I
yeah.
want them to animate and destroy the party. Yes. Yes.
Party destroyers.
They're just we're
Market
gonna hit
zero, dude.
Market Zero over the Lord. Yep. So now
Oh
we're gonna get
yes.
into some shade of Ringo.
All right. So
There's
we've got our
we got
texturing down.
options with shading. So if you missed yesterday's episode, you'll hear me talk about stuff like, oh, you can use whatever color you want, yada yada yada. When you pick your color for shading, you think about what the environment is that the miniature is in, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Um, because that environment is going to be is going to refract light onto the miniature,
Yeah.
right? So it's important to think about, what the environment is. Are these guys going to be in the woods? Where are these? What are they guarding? Maybe that's in a cave. Maybe it's whatever. But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if you're
That
doing
color is
if you're
gonna
doing like in
be.
the woods, you might want to have more of a green tone to
Yeah.
it. If you're doing in the caves, maybe you have more purples or something.
Yeah.
You know, you could be crazy like me and do like green on one side and purple on the other,
Oh yeah. And
right?
get
You could
the
start mix and
real.
matching. Like
Yeah.
those are all obvious options. I always like the midnight blue as a
Okay. Yep.
typical. That's a good run of the mill daytime shadow color. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Mhm.
Uh, and also it's interesting to note that like if you think about like the blue sky, that's what I
Yeah.
think about. So then you would want a bluish color. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly.
And so that the midnight blue really does fit the bill in that respect. Picking a shadow color, you don't want it to be too bright or too dark. I might go with the pine green at the darkest, um, or at the brightest, I might go with a brilliant
Brilliant.
green,
Great.
for instance. So I'm
Yeah, but
trying to
it's still
figure out
pretty in
what
the
would.
middle.
I
So
don't
it's not
think
too
that I
bright.
want to use. I don't want to use the midnight blue for these guys, and the main reason is there's already a lot of gray tones in this thing. And I
Yeah.
think it'll look nicer if I have something else that has some color,
Yeah. That makes it pop
sort of
more.
like
Yeah.
pop a little bit more. So maybe the green will fit the bill. Another fun one might be red. If you want them to look fierce or ominous, that's an option too.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and or if like if they're uh, in the cave, but it's all lit by fire or whatever, so you'd have
Then
a
you could
certain
have more.
more.
Then there's the OSL effect, and that's all done in the highlights. But what
Yeah,
kinda, you know what I
yeah,
mean? So like,
sort of. Yeah,
oftentimes what people will do is they'll paint their OSL. Like they'll say, okay, so this is something over here is casting light, so this whole area is going to get that light, the or whatever from
yeah,
that direction.
that source.
But
Yeah.
really, you're still going to be able to see the stone texture if the light is cast on it somehow.
Hmm.
So like light's a whole nother light happens more in the highlights than it does in the top layers, I think.
Yeah,
And shadows, happen in the bottom layers kind of, and that's how I approach light and shadow for the most part. But here we're in a situation where we have this texture down, and we have to sort of reverse course and say, well, let's get some shadows in here. What color? What color? It's really down to that. A
it's
better
a
blue to
common
use
choice.
might be this Ezram blue,
Okay.
because he's brighter. It's a brighter blue.
Yeah, it's
But I
much
think,
much more.
you know what? I think I'm gonna go with the green. I really am. I'm actually gonna
Yeah,
go. I'm gonna give it a shot and go with the.
'cause you're like I'm wearing a green shirt today, so we're gonna use it. So
Go
that's
with burnt
the
green. Yeah, hey, there you go. You should have said that sooner. I would have totally went with it. Composed chaos is the only way to go.
exactly. That's what we got to do.
Try to
But yeah,
match
no,
the
I think the
shirt.
green will add a
It's a
great
little too bright.
balance. Yep.
It's a little too bright. Maybe the pine green would be better.
Yeah.
Right? I'm down.
There we go.
Whatever. Life is
Perfect.
random. Embrace
Yep.
the randomness.
Yep.
And then when you do, were you ever into X Files?
Yes. Yeah.
There's that one guy who could see the future, and it wasn't for any other reason other than he understood randomness.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
I sometimes feel like that's me
Yeah.
a little bit. I kind of
Yeah.
feel like that's just how it is. So
Got to embrace the randomness, and the green comes in.
the green is gonna come in too. And honestly, I could probably go a little heavy-handed. I'm hitting that leg first just because I can be
Yeah.
pretty heavy-handed uh with it.
And what brush are you using for the
Well,
shadow?
Well, first off, I'm actually gonna switch over to the size 2 angled dry brush,
Okay. Yeah.
just for coverage reasons. And I'm going and loading up quite good just to get the darkest areas first, back under here, and just saturate those shadows nice and good. You can still see the specks are coming through, even though I saturated quite heavily there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now that the brush is mostly released of its, I mean, there's still some
But
going
yeah,
on
but
there,
it's yeah,
but now that
it's
it's
not very
mostly released, I'm gonna go ahead and just
add in some other.
add so it's a little bit more subtle there, just along those edges, right? And down along the dangly bits. And it's basically like I'm running out of paint on this brush, and I'm using that to my advantage. And now I'm going to and hitting the areas that are going to have a softer green.
Yeah, they're not
Right.
gonna be as saturated.
Right. Yeah. But now I'm pretty much out, and now I have to get some more. But something that you can do is you just go. Remember I had those sponges? Do you guys still paint with the sponges?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Really? Oh, I've ruined you.
Yeah, ruined.
No, you ruined. Nobody in the miniature world does this, as
They're
far as
just
I
like, come
know.
on, where's our wet palettes? I'm like, I got my sponge.
You got my sponge? I don't need you. Well, wet palette's more about keeping your paints on your palette wet than it is anything else, I think. I don't know. I can't figure it out because it's a pain in the butt to work with. I don't personally care. I like the result of this. I mean, I keep them all. I have here's a nice one.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I see. I love that.
Right? It's like real abstract art.
Exactly. True art from artiste.
Right. So, I'm a fan of the dry palette. It's just how it is, and I'm I'm pretty sure I get flack. Man, I've had some people roll their eyes at me when I'm in the conventions and stuff. Because I'll
And
pull out
again,
my cup of water and I'll put 2 squirts of soap in it, hand soap. Like, what the hell are you doing?
they're like, yeah, that's the whole thing. And again, people take it too seriously. They're like, look, just because you do it one way doesn't mean that I'm going to change the way I like it. And
Right.
you
Well,
get
it's
good
just
results. I mean, like, look at. I mean, I remember the first miniature I've seen of yours. Like those are incredible. And then you watch other videos and like they're doing it totally different. They get different results. But it's like there's something about this method that again it has a particular characteristic. It isn't trying to be completely smooth. There's gesture.
right.
There's things in there, and I think you do lose some of that in a different way. Again, there's some amazing people doing so many different amazing styles of miniatures,
Sure.
but
Yeah. And just
um,
embrace it. Do whatever works best for you. I personally like to be able to control the amount of water that's on my brush, and I
yeah,
don't know how to do that with a wet palette. The paint is too wet. It's too wet for me. I like to be able to control that, you know.
yeah,
And so again, the brush is kind of damp, so it's just allowing me to glide this green right on. Brush up against the asshole. Get that checked out, dude. It's like a little green.
yeah. Oh man, I don't know what happened. Like that for a couple weeks now.
That's okay if there's a little bit in and around there. I don't want to go too crazy, so I'm gonna
Yeah,
clean off the brush there. And now with a clean, wet brush, I'm just gonna sort of, while the glaze is still wet, I'm just gonna kind of
yeah,
like clean certain areas of the pigment just to make sure that it only stays in certain areas. the areas that I want it. So, is this has this uh, been educational for you so far?
Yeah, no, it's great. And then, like I said, it's one of those things that I always love watching, you know, different perspectives, or even the same perspective, just a different time. Because I feel like,
Yes.
even revisiting stuff, like, even though this covers some of the stuff that we did in our class, like, this a different angle, there's a different perspective, or there's a different thing that maybe that didn't resonate then, and I always feel that I always, and when I was in art school, I was big on reiterate, like, just kind of going over a same technique like a bunch of times, doing it,
Mm,
because it was just like, oh, I learned something different, even though I was doing the same thing, or watched someone paint it the same time. I picked up different nuances every time,
right.
um, and I think that, again, as you kind of say, that, like, controlling the amount of, like, how wet the brush is really has a big effect on, coverage, on the pigment, the way that
Right.
the paint holds, and all of that can be used to your advantage, if you embrace it, and I
Right.
feel that,
Yeah.
like, sometimes, people try to control it too much, but there's this idea that, like, all right, this is what my brush is, I figured out where it is, and then, like, what can I do with that? Oh, this might be better for the front of the shield, and or something
Right.
like that.
Yep.
It's
So right now I'm just trying to get the general shadows in, right? And then what I'm gonna do, maybe at this point in time, I'll go ahead and set the second one to do later. And just work on this on the
this guy.
Mr. Assicles.
Yeah.
It's you ever see the Norseman on the Netflix?
I have not seen that yet.
It's funny, but like in a really kind of campy way. It's kind of like, I don't know, Parks and Rec style campy, but
With
it's well, it's no, but
like,
it's like Norse, but it's like
yeah,
Norse, so it's
Norse mythology. I'll have to check it out.
yeah. So I'm just loading up a 3-0 brush here, detail brush.
All right, let's go
Um,
back a little more of the green.
and then what I'm gonna do here is try and deepen some of these shadows along.
Yeah, kind of emphasizing some of those,
So I'm
bringing
trying to
those out a
do a
bit.
little bit of emphasizing. Might have been a little too heavy-handed there, so I just basically cleaned off the brush, got some water, just sort of wiping off the excess, just to try to dial it in a little bit.
Dial it back just a smudge.
Just dialing it back a little bit. So sometimes, when you put when you put that stroke down, you know, it wasn't forever. You don't have to completely erase and go back, especially if you're fast, because this paint is water soluble and it just, you know, it's easy to wipe off real quick if you get used to it right away. So,
Yeah, the more you kind of work on the figure, the more I really do like the green choice.
yeah, it's coming out just right, and it'll be nice too. I have and I probably should have did this beforehand. I have some pale lichen here. I think I'm going to actually go on with a detailer and um, add some more specks with that. Yeah, he's back. She's going to bother me. She's going to be, oh, she's already whining. She's already whining. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Let's just say hi. Come on. Oh, it's a good
Hey,
girl.
the
You're
furry
a good girl,
friend.
Nelly. Yeah, you are. Just
Yep.
you. She's a brat. She gets her way a little too
Oh,
often.
yeah.
It's okay. It's gonna be okay.
The furry friends rule the house. That's for sure. Well,
Some.
in my case, not so furry because I have hairless cats. But
Oh
in my,
God, why would you ever do that?
I wear a lot of black. What can I say?
Oh, I got you. Okay.
No, they're fantastic. My one hairless cat, Nosferatu. He's gray and
What
white,
a great
and he's
name.
blind in one eye, and and
Oh
he's really
wow.
fat. He's a fat hairless cat,
Oh my
and he loves
God.
to like hang out in the front window
Nobody
and
wants to
leave
see
grease
me without
stains.
my clothes. I would. Just kidding.
I call him Daddy's little grandpa, you know.
Mm.
But he definitely he gets his way. He lets me know. He's like, hey, I know I already had treats today, but I would really like a third.
That's funny.
All right.
No, this is gonna be nice. It's gonna add in all kinds of
Oh yeah, going in between the like Medusa patterns.
just to try to clean up
Pop
some of the
that out a
green
bit.
in there, and also adding in. It's almost like watercoloring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is I'm loading a slightly damp brush. Um, this detailer brush. No, Nelly, get out. No, Nelly. The cat box is not a buffet.
Uh, yeah, that's my wife's sister's dogs that we always have to like block the basement. They come down. They love going into the cat box.
I don't know what is it? What is it in there? They're like well, we gotta get that gut bacteria that they have because
That's the worst smelling thing I've ever heard smelled before. Let's eat it.
let's eat it. Let's eat it. Oh, dogs. They're funny little creatures.
And they are.
I haven't had a. She's um my first dog in a long time. Last time I had a dog, I was my son's age. So
So it's been a had a dog break, and now we've got on a dog again.
yep.
Yeah,
It's
I
good.
grew up with Great Danes, and so
Oh wow.
I have not had a dog since I have moved out on my own. So it's been
Right, because they're
many
expensive.
years. But we figure once my son he gets to probably about 4 or 5, when he starts really wanting a dog, I feel that's when we'll cave and we'll do it.
Well, it's almost time for intermission because
Yeah.
Nellie's whining. I hear it. I hear it. Last time, yesterday, during the stream, she wanted to what's gonna turn to happen? She's like, I want out, ding 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 ding, 'cause we have a bell set up,
Yeah.
and she don't let her out, and she just goes on the back porch and lays down. I'm like, what? You gotta dinging the bell is to tell me that you have to go to the bathroom. You know, not, not the other way around. So I want to make sure that I don't hit that green on the top of this because the light's coming down. So I'm really that's you can see how
You really want to
attacking
focus
the
in the
green on the
shadows. Yeah.
underside of this thing is really helping that define, some definition there, right? The other side. So if you're ever having a trouble, if it doesn't seem intuitive where you should be putting the green,
Yeah.
um, what you can do is you can kind of look at the direction that and it's hard to do because you're at a high angle here, but look at the
Yeah.
direction and anywhere where you can see the bottom, if you're just doing, or from the direction of
Kind of
opposite of the
opposite
light
of the light
source.
sword. Yeah,
Yeah, you
exactly. You're
basically
looking at
go
like
look at the
making a
direction opposite of the light source, and wherever that direction is, everywhere on the other side should have that shadowy color, or like be influenced
influence by
by
that
that
shadowy color.
environment. You know?
Yeah, yeah. That is very helpful tip. Because again, when you're looking at it, again you start to look and then you start to be like, wait, what is really happening? Especially when you're not using, as it's hard to visualize it in a way, but
Right.
that makes it again,
For
and
me,
especially
I
treating it as
just
a negative. Again, it's the opposite of the light, so you look at the opposite direction, and it should be,
I mean,
feel that way.
I shoot the thing with, vector beams from my eyes. I don't know if you guys have those equipped, but that's how I do.
Yeah, gotcha. We haven't leveled up to that yet. I'm hoping once I get enough experience points that I can, use that skill. I wasted it on animal handling.
It's funny.
Things you wouldn't have known when you leveled up last time. But those experience points are hard to get, but we'll do better next time until you don't.
So I saw you downloaded the Nat One book.
Yes. Started
So
briefly looking at it, and I'm very, very excited to kind of check it out and do a session.
how much have you read so far?
I haven't had to with the little guy. I just did
Yeah.
a quick breeze. He's
Did you
been
happen to
we've
see did you happen to look at the rules, the boring rules, or did you happen to look at all the different character options?
the character options, of course.
A lot of fun.
Uh,
There's a
yeah,
lot.
it is.
So did you feel overwhelmed by the
Well,
options?
I didn't, because I love modular things, like so the idea of there being like tons of different options, and and again, and there's that sort of randomness where like I will just kind of like, what do I gravitate towards, and I'll be like, all right, I'll kind of chunk there, and just kind of love the aspect of like there's just so many things that there's a certain, you're not totally choosing it because it's the one you exactly want. You're like, well, there's so
Right.
many, but that one's cool, and I do like that kind of intuitive first, like when I first view, or like even if it's just like, oh, I like that kind of feel to it, or
Right.
even if it's like you haven't gone too far, it's like I just know that that's what I want,
Right.
uh, but
Okay.
I love all
It's
the different.
intermission time. So
Yep.
here's let's take a look some lovely painted minis.
Ooh,
So I
yeah,
actually finished this guy.
that was the guy from
He was
yesterday, right?
from the first stream. Check him
Yeah,
out. Let's take a look at these guys. She's she's been a real winner.
yeah, that was fantastic. I like, again, the red and the blue contrasting with a little bit of pink. I think the colors work so
I'll be
well on
right
that.
back.
All right. Intermission time. Bum, 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 bum.
said there is no man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
There's no one behind the curtain. Yes, you're a good girl, Nellie. Yes, you are. So, I have done some. I don't know if you saw this one that I was working on, but I have done some
Yep.
work on her. She's getting.
Yeah, I see you've added in a lot of red and
Yeah, that pinkish. And actually, at the top
cold.
of the head,
Yeah.
was bothering me so much. I think there were artifacts left over from the molding process or whatever,
Yeah.
or something. You know, maybe it was the vents or something that
Yeah.
were just thicker or something. So I chopped it off, and then I put some green stuff on, and now it's better. And actually, let's just go ahead and see if it. We're gonna do a little segue here.
All right.
Anything goes. Anything goes on MiniGrinder Paints. So we're just gonna put some primer on here, and then we're gonna come back to this later. And it looks like it's gonna look nice now. Hold on. And then we'll come back to that later, maybe, if we got some time. It's good to get some primer on it though right now with that primer
Yep.
set. That's so much more smooth. Before there was like two little knobbies on the top. I was like, what
Uh,
do I do with that? And it doesn't
like,
even like this is not it's not intuitive for me at all. So I had to green stuff it up. But she's coming. I'm digging the color colors with it so far.
yeah.
I like the white to the blue to the purple to the pink
to the red.
thing
Yeah.
going on with a violet shadowy stuff.
Yeah. It's
And
got a
I'm
nice
still
palette to it.
right, yeah, and the red, I mean the red hopefully now that I fix the hat, it'll
So,
the cloak, I'll feel better about it. Okay, back to work, paint monkey.
all right. Monkey time. Monkey.
So what you can do sometimes is you can highlight the shadows. Everybody knows I love to highlight the shadows. So I'm going to pull out that brilliant green. I don't know if you recall
Yeah.
that brilliant green. I'm going to pull him out. It's just a little bit brighter there. It doesn't look that brilliant from that angle for whatever reason, but it is actually quite.
Quite a bit more green
Looking at
and
it, it's
light.
looking more like a yellowish green than a green green. It's actually quite brilliant. I wonder if I have to. I wish you guys could see it like I see it. Maybe someday I'll grow up and afford proper studio equipment.
Yeah. Until then, that's what we got.
You might expect, okay, so at the brighter areas you want to do brighter green, right? Something like that. But it's the opposite. So like shadow spaces should have a clear border to them, or whether it's diffuse or highly, contrasted or whatever.
Yeah.
So, so you want to, if you're going to highlight the shadows, you want to go deeper into that shadow space. So the shadow, what I'm just referring to as that shadow space, is anywhere where there's green, right? Anywhere that is subject to it, but only in the darkest areas. So areas that you can get away with it, the obvious choices are under here. There's a lot
underneath
of details
here.
under here that we don't want to lose, right?
Yeah.
And so we can just go and just put a quick top layer on those details down there just to sort of get some contrast even in the deepest reaches.
Yeah. Even though it's in shadow, it still has a range in there, and so that
there's still a range in there that we want to exploit in some fashion. Just because you're painting shadows doesn't mean that you don't have to paint details. Because you're otherwise, and I did that for a while. I was like, oh, shadow space done, woo.
But then you realize that there's and again, I think that's where the kind of more the for me, the more art part of it happens, where you're like, again,
Right.
we're not just plugging numbers into a supercomputer. It's just like, no, this is where we're like, well, if we it kind of exaggerate this part, it actually becomes more interesting because again, it's a little bit more. It doesn't quite make sense to what our brain would normally do because our name's like, oh, well, that's in shadow. But again, our brains kind of they oversimplify things, and knowing that like, hey, there's actually a lot more randomness and things going on there than our brains kind of normally put in their mind's eye,
Right. Yeah.
and that's for me, like, I'm kind of bad at doing like shadows and colors without some sort of influence, like I need to have kind of things coming in, pictures and reference. It doesn't have to be the same things. I do like sometimes I'll just I'll use different pictures or different
Right.
sorts of references, and again, things that maybe not related at all, but it like, oh man, what if I tried to add this here? I didn't think about adding this green here, or these particular colors. And to me, that slightly unexpectedness is what makes it interesting, what makes it beautiful.
It's hard to see on there on the screen, but this is very much more green than the pine green that's already done.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to hit just some of the deepest regions of it. It's still very dark, but that's a start. Really, it's just at the end of the day, it's all about increasing that contrast the best way possible, exploiting
Yeah.
the edges,
Yeah. And kind of really
So
pulling
like,
out the little details that the miniatures have, because the miniatures have such great detail, and even in those, again, the under spots where no one's going to be looking, but adding, again, exaggerating that, adding a little green, can boop boop boop.
yeah, a little bit of boop, boop.
Deep deep. The fun of painting.
Right, yeah, the joys of paint. I'm just gonna paint a little happy testicle here.
Yeah. Be like, Bob Ross's happy trees don't have nothing on our happy testicles.
That's right. You ever watch Monk
No.
on the show Monk?
Yeah, was it the old like detective show? Was that
Yeah,
or?
it's you might. I don't know if you're into that stuff, but um, it's pretty good. It's pretty funny. At one point, I don't know if you're familiar with the character, but he's got like tons of anxieties.
Yeah,
Um,
I was. I think my dad maybe liked it because I know of it and I've seen bits and
gotcha.
pieces, but
It's
it's definitely something I
it's
would be
very
into. Though.
entertaining and quirky, but I like mysteries anyways.
Yeah.
Um, but I often don't like cop shows. But I really like that show a while back. I started watching it again, but there's one episode where like the investigation takes him into uh like an art studio, and there's there's a naked person there. He can't even look at naked people.
Yeah.
There's somebody out there on the stream right now who's like, I can't even watch this stream right now because of these testicles. There's somebody's, and I apologize to that person, but it's not really my fault that there's
Yep.
testicles
This
in
is
this picture.
in the name of art. This is the work we have to do.
Right. This is serious work here. I'm doing the best I can.
Gotta
I'm the
get
one who's
the
got to paint them,
yeah. Others just have to view it. They don't have to do the work. They don't
Right,
have to
yeah, they don't even have to
jingle the
graze the
jangle.
testicles with their brush. I do. Testes, 1, 2,
There we
3.
go.
Man,
3.
good old Mike Judge,
So good.
Where's where's Mike Judge right now? He's probably laughing his ass off.
Yeah. Damn it, Bobby.
Yeah. Oh, said, damn it, Bobby.
Feel like King of Hill is one of those. I feel like I feel like I didn't really get into it as much when the first time around, and then like I've kind of revisited it, and I like absolutely kind of I don't know. there's the
There's
whole like
there's a realness
genre,
to it.
like yeah, of like King of the Hill memes that just kind of rabbit hole that a few of my friend and I have gone down.
Oh, memes, the future. The future is memes.
Yeah.
The future is memes. Who knew, man?
We're
Bottled
living
water and
in the
memes.
strangest timeline.
Bottled water and memes. The future.
Or
Dude, could
now it's
you
getting to the
imagine like back in like 1985, somebody selling a bottle of water?
yeah yeah. They're like what?
There's no such thing.
And now
What do
it's
you
like
mean? You mean
you
the
got
stuff out of the faucet, right?
artisanal spring. We have our artisanal spring. Well, this is from our fancy. This one's from Fiji. Well, this one's in a glass bottle, and this one.
Sierra Springs. Hey, Adrian Monk likes Sierra Springs water. He only
Yeah.
drinks Sierra Springs water. It's the only water I drink. There's an episode where he gets amnesia, and somebody asks him what kind of water he wants. He goes, "There's a certain kind that I like, but I don't know what it is." And then so they serve him Sierra Springs. He goes, "This water is very good." Nobody cares about Adrian Monk, I guess. It's an old show, but man, it's really good. It's proper. It's a proper mystery. Oftentimes they give it away, but a number of episodes they don't give it away, and it's you can figure it out yourself. You know.
Yeah, I love mysteries. My wife and I watch them. We've been re-binging Murder She Wrote.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like so that's one of those that is kind of
I wasn't able to watch that. When it was on reruns when I was a
yeah
kid because I was a kid.
yeah
So maybe I ought to give it a try again sometime. It's got to
yeah.
be.
You should. I've at this point now. I consider myself like a Murder She Wrote fanboy for all because I've watched the whole season twice at this point now. Again, it was
Really?
growing like yeah no yeah we were on the second rotation through. But it's just because it's the show that we just when we don't know what to watch we just put that on and it's just like the thing that was interesting is growing up I watched a lot of like Nick at Night and TV Land. So
Mhm.
I like know a lot of old TV stars and there's so many cameos, like so many
Oh
cameos from
wow.
like so many famous people like just guest star on that from a lot of shows that were popular in the 70s and 80s,
Right.
they'll be and my wife she didn't grow up with cable so she didn't know a lot of the old TV. Like
Right.
my main like TV knowledge is like from like I Love Lucy in the 50s all the way through like the 80s, and that's kind of where my main like TV knowledge is. So it's like all the stuff in the last 20 years I couldn't tell you who's who, but you put on Murder She Wrote, and I could tell you that's from the Brady Bunch, and that's from the A Team, and like oh yeah.
Just about the turn of 2000s when I stopped watching network television. When I was all done way back then. Oh shit! I'm seeing it now. You guys are seeing it too. Look at that. Look at that. It's glaringly obvious.
Yeah,
The
um,
bones material coming. I gotta go back in and primer that area. I'll do that later. Nothing is F. Nothing is F.
yeah, we can still work around a
We can work
little.
around it. It's okay. I
Yeah.
do have to deepen this shadow right here along so the shield pops a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
And the shoulders too. Another thing that you can do is you can turn the light on, right? And then take a picture of the miniature and then adjust, the contrast so you can actually see the shadows and the light characteristics so you can see the shadows and how they, and that gives you a good idea of what you can do too.
Yeah. It gives you a little more
Hmm.
information if you're struggling.
A little bit more. Every time I turn around, there's more green than I have to do.
More shadows that need highlighting.
More shadows. Well, I'm actually going back to the pine green in some of these.
Get more green.
Just grab some water on the tip of my brush to get that flowing. It's just a
Yeah,
quick way to transition from, because I went from a fully loaded detail brush with pine green, and then as the paint was running out, then I went and just touched my sponge, and then hello,
yep.
woohoo, I'm still
Yep.
here, good.
You're still
And
good.
then that got the paint that was left over on the brush that wasn't flowing
And got to
again.
pulled that out so you can then use it. Yeah,
And then the
water
frame was
control is
there.
definitely key. That was something that I've still been working on quite a bit, and a
It's
lot of
it can get
practice.
messy if you're not in control,
Yeah,
and that's typically what happens for people, and then they get so frustrated with it. But myself included. But what I realized that water control was important was because actually back in the day I didn't use water at all, and then whenever I started using it, then that changed the game entirely. It's like, okay, well, this is what I got to do all the time. So, but I noticed that because I was a brush licker, I still lick the brush, but I don't lick dirty brushes. I'll lick clean brushes. I don't lick dirty brushes, and that's what the
anymore.
sponge really is
That's it.
a means of applicating moisture because I was getting it before from my mouth.
Yeah,
And now
you've
I'm
got your
trying to
virtual.
get the precise amount. And what's great about using a sponge is number one, I just clean the brush with the sponge. So now the brush is totally clean really
Yeah,
because all the pigment just came
right now.
it's now on the sponge. And then you can go wash out the sponge or whatever. But number one, I can clean the brush with it. Number two, now it's like perfectly ready in for like a glaze just by
Yep.
doing that. If I needed more water, I could have went and got water from the paint water, obviously, but
Yeah.
to do like a wash or whatever. I don't really wash too much. I do slight glazes and heavy glazes, and I target them because oftentimes with the glaze, all that work that we did with the speckling, it might have covered most of that up. You know,
Yeah.
so you don't want that either.
Yeah. You want it to be all that kind of work and texture to show through.
Right, yeah. So, this green's all nice and dandy for the shadow space, but in the darkest reaches, let me keep on going here with this burnt green. In the darkest reaches, we're going to need some pure black to create more contrast.
Yeah, just to
Also,
really
just in the
exaggerate
darkest
that.
areas, and to sort of section off, one area from another. So there's like that muscle right here. I'm just gonna put it there. You don't have to do the whole path. A lot of people think that like they have to when they're highlighting or applying a layer, to paint the whole damn thing. It's not. You don't have to. You can do less work, and it ends up looking like more,
Yeah.
right?
I guess, it because it adds a little more variation, isn't quite as uniform, and again, it adds
Right.
a little bit more interesting, less pattern, and more, kinda, yeah, it's
So right now, what I'm doing with this brilliant green is just trying to like get those surfaces to pop on the underside a little bit. So those are not spaces where I'd be putting the black, but it is starting to look like a something.
yeah,
Looking like a something.
looking like a
Is it looking like a man? What's that from? Is that from is that in Living
yeah,
Color
or
or
yeah,
Mad TV?
yeah, That's what it was.
Mad TV wasn't. Yeah, I used to watch TV and then I stopped. It's-
That's
I,
that's where I'm
the real
at.
reason is I hate
I lots of
commercials.
hobbies. So.
Speaking of which, commercial time.
Yeah.
If you would like to support me, head over to my website, and it's mgstudio.myshopify.com. The link is in the description. I sell 3D files for 3D printing, terrain mostly. I got some mushroom miniatures, and I even have a bust that I recently. Here's a bust. Um, This this guy
Oh, nice.
is totally ripping. So it's
That's
kind of like
fantastic.
my um, flesh tone study that I did. Flesh tone and
Wow, that's a good muscular shadows and
right, yeah, you
yeah.
got all kinds of fun that you can do with that. So he's over there. You can print him out if you want. That's taking my the direction with a lot of my um, terrain stuff is all going to go 3D printing wise. And when we play Natural One and I broadcast the tabletop, we're going to be playing that on top of my 3D printed terrain. Um, those are very very tasty stuff. Maybe I could pull up an image. I could pull up an image. It wouldn't be too difficult, probably, for me to pull up the image. Maybe. We'll see if I already have one. Yeah, here's what our games are going to look like. Hey, ta-da! Oh, it's super big. It's not going to look like that. Nice one, Dave. Well, okay. So that's like really, if you're like approximately 2 centimeters from those bat wings, that's what it would look
I
like. All
like
right.
that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Maybe it's
I
because
was
it's
a
only
3D printer is like the one of the few hobbies that I haven't gone down yet. It's definitely in the future. I've
I mean,
many a times, especially with all the between miniatures and RC cars and all of that. There's tons of printing resources, So
oh
um,
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. You said you were into RC cars too.
yeah, I do. One I do a couple different aspects, but I'm into scale crawlers, so scale replicas of off-road vehicles, and from all the way to so they'll be printing
Okay.
stuff like, oh, here's a scale car jack, and here is a scale cooler, and then here's a scale bicycle to put on the back of your scale truck. Yeah.
So is there anything from miniature painting that you're going to be able to carry over to that?
Yes. So the interior of my I've just finished a Axial SCX-10-3, and there's an interior where there's a figure that has to be painted, and so I get
Oh.
to, and so now that's just primed, and they actually have different, head pieces, so you can change out the face or the hat and the hair, so then I get to do that up. So I'll be making, doing a little figure painted. Um, and then painting the interior. They have stickers, but why sticker when you can paint it? So
Right.
uh,
Yeah. Precisely.
kind of where I'm at. And then I also have a rally car that I'm building, and there's the drivers and interior for that. So I've got two interiors that I'll be painting as well. So,
Hmm.
but same kind of thing. Using that same style, and again, because most of the ones that people are doing are just very flat with no shading or light sources, and I'm like, we can do better.
Hmm.
We got this.
So I thought it would be fun to highlight some of the shadows even more. I think it would be fun. It would be a blast. But I don't want to use something that's like a yellowish green is what I want because I'm thinking like a grove in a forest or whatever. So I'm thinking greens with a nice that are nice and warm also. Maybe this Dungeon of Sublime will do the trick. At this point in time, what I usually do is mix. Color. It's just too bright. That's too bright. We're gonna color mix. No, get some of that calistria
Oh yeah,
yellow.
you get that yellow.
All right, and that brilliant green. I'm going to use that same brilliant green. I'm going to go ahead and use the 3-0. Just finding a home somewhere in between. Yeah, that's perfect. Perfect. That's the color I want to.
There we go.
There we go. There you have it. And all we're going to do is just find some details and accent them briefly. We don't need to accent the whole detail. Just find some space, especially where the green was put down. We're just kind of highlighting. I'm trying to get you guys a nice good
You
angle.
got some highlights there.
More. The great thing about the dry palette is it saves your mixes. So now I know what color I used, right?
Yep,
So
there it was.
that's the main benefit with um with your dry palette. So again, I'm just touching those points right there.
Okay,
So
yeah,
somewhere
just make
down there, you can see the details just pop a little bit better. You're trying to, you know, it's your fault for covering it up anyway, so you might as well do the miniature some service and reveal them yet again. So I basically screwed up there. So I got my brush, cleaned it off, got some water on it, and then I used that. I just brushed back and forth until it went away. Fixed. Totally fixed.
There we go.
There you have it. I'm just gonna grab some more of that. In just a little bit. So suddenly the shadows have become the light. That's what like a lot of people they're like, well, wait a second, shadow's a shadow, light's light. They get confused. It's really all the same thing. How you highlight something defines what you're doing. You know. And so
Exactly.
I've been painting shadows, lit shadows, for a while now. And what it really ultimately what it is just ambient lighting. You know.
Exactly. I mean, and that's the thing is like if people are viewing light and shadow so different, like it's the same thing. It's all light, and,
Right. Yeah.
they adhere to the same physics and principles. So it's all just a different side of the coin in a way.
There's one more area here that's kind of bothering me. I gotta saturate some more pine green. A couple areas actually. One is right here. Green right there.
Okay, yeah.
And then the other is saturate this because I want to put the brilliant green down on that arm. So, it's easy to get lost in everything that you have to hit up. So don't be ashamed. You have to go back and touch something up because you forgot or missed it or whatever. Especially if you just put out
Yeah.
another splotch of paint.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of kind of the biggest things that I've gotten better at over the last year is kind of going back and forth and not not segment and be like, oh, I moved on to the next segment. You're like, no, it's like you do what it needs to. Sometimes you go
Right.
back and the things you do in the afterwards then open up a spot where you're like, oh, well, I maybe need to go back and redo this that wasn't as big of a priority then, but
Sometimes it's just about what color's on your brush,
yeah,
And when you're doing commission painting and stuff like that, you're trying to speed along. And every time you clean your brush and move on, then it's like you got to go back and load it back up, and you know what I mean.
yeah,
Right now, my brush is in working order, I would say.
yep, it's doing the work,
It's doing all the work.
providing the green. Yeah, right below the kind of his mane.
hmm It's like the mane actually looks like its actual hair, so I'm tempted to make that a different color.
Yeah,
But
so you've got the stone, and then you got the mane, and then possibly some metal bits. So it might add some good contrast or some color.
right, trying to get that underside of the mane. Maybe if we get
Getting the other
maybe
side.
we should be doing here with this blue. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab some extra water and then kind of like wash in here. Just trying to get some extra. I might have to go back in and then highlight each one of those little hairs coming up. I definitely will. And also, okay. So
Yeah,
something's happening.
yeah. Got some more green shadows popping.
More green shadows popping. To pop these guys down here. Called up my friends, see if they wanted to hang out um, tonight, and they're like, "Well, we'd love to, but we're taking over a Hungarian bakery." Oh, you're getting up early.
Hungarian bakery. All right. Well,
That's a hell of a thing to do.
yeah, it's not don't hear that every day. So
Right, yeah. I told them whenever things normalize or whatever, I'd love to come and help them sometime just to sort of learn, you know, experience. I'd like to experience what it's like to work in a bakery. I want to charge them. I want to up
yeah,
my baking skills a little bit.
up the baking. Baking is difficult. It's so I do a lot of cooking, but baking that's the next realm. It's so much more
hmm
precise and scientific and like you can't wing it the same way you can in cooking. I've had some
Yeah,
epic disasters. You're like, oh yeah, I can cook, I can bake, and you're like, oh
I
no
can
no
follow directions. Nah,
yeah. Mm.
yeah,
So I really appreciate anyone and that makes good baked goods because I know how difficult that just
I
getting
got
the
some
right
killer.
consistency
I got
makes
some
and break.
killer biscuits. Let me tell you,
I love some biscuits.
my
Hmm.
buttermilk biscuits blow your mind. That's right.
Ready.
You, I make killer sausage gravy too. Not a fan.
I'm not a. I don't do meat, so I'm a bit of
Oh, okay.
a guy
Well, my
for the.
roux, that roux is amazing too.
Yeah, there we go. I do love the food though. I love
Yeah,
it's
I'm a meat eater. I apologize, but it's just who
that's
I am.
yeah, that is fine. I'm very relaxed when it comes to that kind of stuff, but
That's good. I had a friend who was very militant about it.
I
He's like, "That's
I
not the
know.
way to be
Yeah,
about
it's not.
anything."
Yeah, that's kind of it's like look, that's a
I
great way.
It bothered me where I was getting my meat from, so I searched out. I get mine from Dumas.
Yep,
Uh,
Doom is great. I like so
I,
my
I
wife eats meat and stuff, so we have meat. And it's funny because I actually cook meat. I just don't eat it. So because
mm,
I'll make steaks for my wife and stuff, and it's just
I
I know some
gotcha.
of my other vegetarian friends are like, oh, how do you do it? And I was like, I don't know.
It's just
Meat's delicious. I've never. I'm never. It's great. I don't partake in it for several reasons, but at the same time, like hey, everything's it's up to you, and
right.
it's not as in there's implications for everything, whether you eat a veggie or a piece of meat. It's not like everything is influenced by other things. So
So,
it's all about trade.
oh,
Help! There we go. There we
yay.
go.
Right.
Yay!
We save it. We saved it again. Good
Saved it
job, Paint Monkey.
again. Yay. Ooh.
Ooh, ooh, good stuff. And here I thought you were like, oh, I love the highlighting that you're doing right there.
And then silent.
Blam,
It's
gone, silence. So,
like,
what I'm doing is doing light glazes of the golden blonde,
okay.
basically. I don't know if you can see the,
Yeah, I see where you're starting on the top of
yeah.
that shoulder there.
And I'm kind of dabbing at it too, because that'll help retain some kind of texture.
Yeah, because we don't want to cover up all the other texture that
Right,
was
yeah.
put
But
in.
we do need more poppage,
Yeah,
right?
exaggerate that contrast,
Right.
and we've got that
And
nice warm kind of
so
light warm color.
here's what I'm
So
doing. So now the brush was already moist. I'm actually going to move that a little more, just just a nip. Move
just
that
the
out,
nip.
and I see how it spreads on the canvas, and then
Yeah,
I
so I have
use that to sort of judge when I'm ready to go. You know.
we have one that's ready.
So I'm gonna hit that right there. Muscles up here.
Some muscle highlights.
I'm also going to be kind of courteous of the cracks too, and conscious of them whenever I'm doing this step. You see, it picked up some of that green underneath a little bit there.
Yeah, so it's kind of blending a little bit
Yeah, a
on
little
its own.
blending, and that, hey, you know what? That I'm okay with. But what you can do is come back up, just
Yeah, just
ahead.
another layer and kind of really bring that brightness up.
And I want to highlight over here, but it's too much. So I'm just gonna just a little bit here. Correct. Can you see this? Because that's gonna catch the light. This part for me is the where the fun begins when you start,
Yeah,
playing
adding.
with the light and whatnot. So it's also kind of glaringly obvious that I need to deepen some of these cracks a little bit. So maybe it is time to bring the black out and just do that before I get crazy. Highlight.
Yeah, so you
Um,
can really kind of
right.
make
Because I mean
those
that's I
dark
should be
spots
dealing with
dark.
that first, really.
Yeah,
Because I'm at a point now looking at how I'm highlighting this. I'm at a point where I want, I'm being very targeted anyways. And since I'm not, blasting the whole miniature with something, you know, um, because I'm going to be layering on top of that, if I'm layering on top with detail work, like fine detail work like this, then, I can get around those cracks. But if I'm blasting the whole miniature, it's going to fill in the cracks. So I'm at a point right now where I'm not blasting the whole miniature with everything. The other thing that I didn't do was throw on some pale lichen. Let's see if we can
oh yeah. No,
let's
don't
see what this
forget
is
the
going to look
pale
like in
lichen.
certain areas too. So let's just play
Yeah,
around a little bit. We're a little freeform. I want to do some highlights. I tested the waters with the highlights. I'm gonna like doing those highlights that way. What time? Oh,
good.
we're at 4 o'clock. I don't know if you know that or not. It looks like this is
Oh
only
yeah.
gonna be finishing another time. Wow.
Like you said, the time just goes.
I
But
told you, man. I told you.
it's just like
But
All
I have that
right.
pale lichen on there, so I think we'll use that. So like right here on this helmet here,
And
just gonna
helmet
scribble
side.